Hello and welcome to the 2016 information session on the changes to the rules for pool safety barriers. This presentation will discuss changes to the Building Regulations 2012, the swimming pool barrier provisions of the Building Code of Australia 2016, the Australian Standard 1926.1 2012 edition, the Australian Standard 1926.2 2007 edition, incorporating Amendments 1 and 2. I will also explore some scenarios to illustrate the application of the regulations. In Western Australia, 40 toddlers drowned in the decade between 2003 and 2013. Approximately 40% of these drownings occur in backyard swimming pools. For every drowning death, it is estimated that there are 10 children admitted to hospital as the result of a non-fatal drowning. A number of these children will be left with some long-term impairment as a consequence. Pools continue to be one of the leading causes of accidental death for children under the age of 5. Supervision is the key to preventing drowning. However, pool safety barriers can help people supervise children and reduce the risk of a drowning event. Pool safety barriers are not supposed to replace supervision. Legislation in Western Australia requires that pools and spas have effective safety barriers to aid in the prevention of children from drowning. Pool safety barriers are inspected by local governments so that a period of 4 years does not lapse between inspections. Pool inspectors check the safety barriers for compliance against the barrier requirements detailed in the Building Regulations 2012. The regulations provide two sets of requirements: pre-May 2016 requirements and post-May 2016 requirements. From the 1st of May 2016, new swimming pools are required to comply with the new requirements. Older swimming pools are able to continue complying with the older requirements, or if they wish, they can comply with the new requirements. The reason for the change is due to a number of factors. Principally, the state government signed up to the 2012 Intergovernmental Agreement for the operation of the Australian Building Codes Board to reduce the number of state variations through the National Construction Code. It is also preferable to be using the latest and most up-to-date version of the standard, as it is considered to be an improved version. The Building Commission also wanted a step towards swimming pool barrier uniformity with other states. The Building Regulations 2012. The Building Amendment Regulations No. 2, 2016 were gazetted on the 15th of April 2016. The commencement date for these regulations was the 1st of May 2016. The updated Building Regulations 2012 can be viewed at the State Law Publisher website, which is www.slp.wa.gov.au. So the way the legislation works is the Building Act 2011 is the head of power. The Building Regulations 2012 are adopted under the Act. For barrier compliance, there are effectively two streams under the regulations: post-May requirements and pre-May requirements. The post-May 2016 requirements are the requirements in the regulations and the Building Code of Australia. The BCA references Australian Standards 1926.1 2012 edition and the 1926.2 2007 edition, incorporating Amendments 1 and 2. The pre-May 2016 requirements are the requirements in the regulations and the older Australian Standard 1926.1 1993 edition. In addition, the pre-May 2016 requirements also permit compliance with the post-May 2016 requirements. Regulation 3 of the Building Regulations 2012 is for defined terms. There have been changes to the defined terms in Regulation 3. An approved barrier solution means an alternative solution used to comply with a building code pool barrier requirement that has been approved in accordance with Regulation 51 by the Permit Authority. This is a continuation of the process the previous regulations had, requiring alternative solutions to be approved by the Permit Authority. Building Code Pool Barrier Requirements means the performance requirements for pool barriers in the Building Code of Australia. This is both P253 from BCA Volume 2 and GP 1.2a in Volume 1. The definition of swimming pool is as defined in the Building Code. The Building Code defines a swimming pool as any excavation or structure containing water and principally used, or that is designed, manufactured or adapted to be principally used for swimming, wading, paddling or the like, including a bathing or wading pool or spa. Private swimming pool means a swimming pool that is associated with a Class 1A building or less than 30 sole occupancy units in a Class 2 building or a Class 4 part of a building, which has the capacity to contain water that is more than 300 millimetres deep. Pre-May 2016 private swimming pool is a defined term as well. It means a private swimming pool installed before May 2016, or installed on or after the 1st of May 2016 in accordance with plans, drawings and specifications submitted to the Permit Authority for approval before that day. Post-May is not defined, but essentially a post-May private swimming pool is every private swimming pool that is not a pre-May private swimming pool. Regulation 15B is new and was inserted after the Building Commission identified an inconsistency in the standard. The regulation modifies the Australian Standard 1926.1 2012. In the 2012 edition of 1926.1, the use of the 60-degree chamfer is different to the 1993 edition of the standard, permitting its use where gaps between vertical members are up to 100 millimetres. The Building Commission contacted Standards Australia to seek clarification, and subsequently a Standards Committee member who advised that the change was unintentional. As such, we amended the regulations to modify the standard. This essentially maintains the same previous requirement from the 1993 edition. Regulation 28 is for the required inspection of pool safety barriers. The regulation details that upon completion of building work for pool safety barriers, the builder is to have the pool safety barriers inspected to ascertain compliance with the regulations. This regulation has changed and now references compliance with Regulation 31C instead of Regulation 50. This is essentially specifying that the pool barrier inspection conducted at the completion of the building works is to be measured against the applicable building standard. It is important to note that in this regulation it is the responsibility of the pool barrier builder to ensure compliance. Additionally, the use of the word enclosure was replaced with barrier to be more consistent with the standard. Regulation 31 covers applicable building standards, and Regulation 31C specifically is for swimming pools and their barriers. Regulation 31C has had significant changes. The next few slides are for pools that require a building permit. When we discussed Regulation 3, we looked at the definition of private swimming pool. A private swimming pool is a swimming pool that is associated with a Class 1A building, less than 30 Class 2 sole occupancy units, or a Class 4 building that is capable of a depth of more than 300 millimetres of water. Swimming pools other than private swimming pools includes public swimming pools and physiotherapy pools. They are required to comply with Regulation 31A2. However, the Building Code pool barrier requirements do not apply. Again, in Regulation 3, we looked at the definition of Building Code pool barrier requirements, which was the performance requirements of the Building Code of Australia for the pool safety barriers. Regulation 31A2 is in reference to the BCA that is in effect at the time of the application for the building permit, or the BCA that is in effect 12 months prior to the date the building permit application was submitted. What this means is that the construction of the swimming pool itself must comply with current BCA or the BCA 12 months prior. However, there is no requirement for pool safety barriers under these regulations for a non-private swimming pool. The Health Aquatic Facilities Regulations 2007 and subsequent Code of Practice controls pool safety barriers for these kinds of pools. Private swimming pools, other than pre-May 2016 private swimming pools, are essentially post-May 2016 private swimming pools, or new pools. These pools are required to comply with Regulation 31A2A, which is the building code that is in effect at the time of the application for the building permit. This specifically does not include the BCA that was in effect 12 months prior, as BCA 2015 had a West Australian variation for pool safety barriers. Additionally, an alternative solution cannot be used to comply with a building code pool barrier requirement unless the alternative solution is an approved barrier solution. This means that an alternative solution needs to comply with the performance provisions of the building code for pool safety barriers, and that the alternative solution must be approved by the Permit Authority. Pre-May 2016 private swimming pools are required to comply with Regulation 31A2A or Regulation 50. This section of the table is specifically aimed at new or replacement pool barriers for pre-May 2016 pools. The pool barrier can either comply with post-May current BCA requirements or the pre-May barrier requirements in Regulation 50. An alternative solution to the post-May requirements may be utilised if approved by the Permit Authority. This slide and the next are for pools that do not require a building permit. A building permit is not required for a swimming pool or pool safety barrier if the property is located in an area listed in column 2 of the table in Schedule 4 of the regulations. For all swimming pools, other than private swimming pools, that do not require a building permit, the requirement is compliance with Regulation 31E2, other than the Building Code pool barrier requirements. Regulation 31E2 requires compliance with the BCA that was in effect at the time construction commenced. There is no requirement under these regulations to provide pool safety barriers for these non-private swimming pools. The Health Aquatic Facilities Regulations 2007 control pool safety barriers for non-private swimming pools. For private swimming pools that do not require a building permit, the requirement is compliance with Regulations 31E2, which is the BCA at the time the construction commenced. An alternative solution to the pool safety barriers may be utilised if approved by the Permit Authority. So, although you may not require a building permit for the construction of the pool or safety barriers, you will require approval from the Permit Authority for any alternative solution to the pool safety barrier requirements. Regulation 31D is the applicable building standard for relocated buildings. It has been amended and no longer can be used for swimming pools. Regulation 31C is the applicable building standard for all swimming pools and their safety barriers, including for relocated pools. Regulation 31G is the applicable building standard for unauthorised works and has had a minor amendment. The amendment means that an alternative solution cannot be used to comply with the performance requirements of the Building Code for pool safety barriers unless the Permit Authority has approved the alternative solution. Otherwise, the regulation remains the same, with the applicable building standard being the BCA in effect at the time of the application. Regulation 48 falls under Part 8 for existing buildings and Division 2 for swimming pools in the Building Regulations 2012. Regulation 48 lists additional definitions that are used in Division 2. The definition of access through a building has had a minor reshuffle and reword. The word enclosure has been replaced with barrier. Regulation 50 details the pool barrier requirements for existing pools, and this is the section that swimming pool inspectors primarily use. It details that owners and occupiers are responsible for pool safety barrier compliance. Changes have been made in various areas. Subregulation 1A is a new clause. It details that a barrier is to comply with the Building Code pool barrier requirement that was in effect at the time the application for a building permit for the pool was made, or otherwise at the time the construction of the pool commenced. If the pool is a pre-May 2016 pool, the barrier can continue to comply with the old requirements under this regulation or comply with the new requirements. Subregulation 1B details that an alternative solution cannot be used to comply with the performance requirements of the Building Code for pool safety barriers unless the Permit Authority has approved the alternative solution. Subregulation 2 to 5 were amended to reflect that the older requirements only apply to pre-May 2016 pools. The boundary fence concessions detailed in Subregulation 5 only apply to the pre-May 2016 pools. This is the clause that details that only one side of a boundary barrier fence has to comply. Regulation 51 covers approvals by the Permit Authority for variations to the barrier requirements. A new subregulation 5 has been added. It details that a Permit Authority may approve an alternative solution to the Building Code pool barrier requirements if the Permit Authority is satisfied that the alternative solution complies with the relevant performance requirements. I will now discuss alternative solutions, specifically for pre-May 2016 pools and post-May 2016 pools, which have different requirements. For pre-May 2016 pools, Regulation 51, Subregulation 2, allows a Permit Authority to approve an alternative solution if the barrier is as effective as Australian Standard 1926.1 1993 edition. Subregulation 3 allows the Permit Authority to approve a door if the provision of a fence or gate would cause a significant problem of a structural nature, a significant problem of any other nature, or if the pool is totally enclosed by a building, or if in the opinion of the Permit Authority the barrier would create a significant problem for a person with a disability. Subregulation 4 details that a Permit Authority must have regard to whether a child resides at the property. For post-May 2016 pools, Regulation 50, Subregulation 1B, details that an alternative solution must meet the performance requirements of the BCA and be approved by the Permit Authority. Regulation 51, Subregulation 5, details that a permit authority may approve it. Note that unlike the pre-May 2016 requirements, there is no specific requirements for door approvals. A pre-May 2016 pool can use these alternative solution requirements instead of the pre-May 2016 requirements if they wish. Other than minor word changes, like pool enclosure to pool barrier, there have been no significant changes to other provisions within the regulations. Just a reminder that unless otherwise exempted, a building permit is required for swimming pools as well as for pool safety barriers. Next I will talk about the Building Code of Australia 2016. For the most part of more than 2 decades, the BCA has had a state variation for Western Australia that meant the swimming pool provisions of the BCA did not apply. BCA 2016 has had this variation deleted. The Building Regulations 2012, as previously detailed, has also been amended so that BCA 2016 swimming pool provisions and subsequently Australian Standard 1926.1 and .2 are to be used in WA from the 1st of May 2016. The BCA definition of swimming pool, as detailed in the regulations section of this presentation, is any excavation or structure containing water principally used or designed or manufactured or adapted to be principally used for swimming, wading, paddling or the like, including a bathing or wading pool or spa. The BCA, both in volumes 1 and 2, require that a swimming pool comply with the reference standards AS 1926.1 2012 edition and AS 1926.2 2007 edition. Point 1 has the barrier construction requirements. Point 2 has the barrier location requirements. When using Point 2, please ensure that you're using the version that includes amendments numbers 1 and 2. The performance provisions of the BCA in regards to pool safety barriers read the same in Volume 1 and Volume 2. A barrier must be provided to a swimming pool and must be continuous for the extent of the hazard and be of a strength and rigidity to withstand the foreseeable impact of people and restrict the access of young children to the pool and the immediate pool surrounds, and have any gates and doors fitted with latching devices not readily operated by young children and constructed to automatically close and latch.